Hello, welcome back. For this particular week, we will be covering Chapter 12, which is accruals, deferrals, and the worksheet. The first section that we will be covering describes how to compute adjustments for a merchandiser and how to enter the adjustments on a worksheet. In Objective 1, we will determine the adjustment for merchandise inventory and enter the adjustment on the worksheet. We are or have been studying the accrual basis of accounting. And remember that the accrual basis of accounting is different than the cash basis of accounting. In accrual basis of accounting, we have revenues, which are recognized when they are earned, not necessarily when they are paid. Financial statements are prepared using this system, which is the accrual basis of accounting. So revenue is recognized when the sale is complete. And we determine that a sale is complete when the title to the goods passes to the customer or when the service is provided. And for sales on account, revenue is recognized when the sale occurs, even though the cash is not collected immediately. Likewise, we will have expenses that are recognized when incurred or used. This is not necessarily when cash is paid. And what we do is assign the expense to the accounting period in which it helped to earn the revenue for the business. So even though we may not receive the cash for that expense in that same accounting period, we incur the expense when it helps generate revenue for that particular period. In this chapter, we will learn to determine the adjustments for merchandise inventory and place it on the worksheet. The merchandise inventory account is an asset that appears on the balance sheet, and the amount in the account is the beginning balance at the start of the period. However, the journal entry to record the purchase of inventory for cash, assuming a periodic inventory system, is that we debit purchases and credit cash. At the end of the period, merchandise inventory still contains the beginning balance, and it must be adjusted to show the ending merchandise on hand. So, when the trial balance is prepared at the end of the period, the merchandise inventory account still shows the beginning inventory for the period because no entries have been made directly to the account during that year. So therefore, we must make an adjustment to this account to reflect the ending inventory at the end of the period. So at the end of the period, a merchandiser usually takes a physical inventory count to determine how much inventory is still on hand. So for the purposes of this chapter, in this case, here we have a company known as Whiteside Antiques, and we have a beginning inventory balance of $52,000. However, the inventory on hand at the end of the period, once the merchandiser takes a physical count, it determines that only $47,000 in inventory remains on hand. So what we need to do is adjust the merchandise inventory account to reflect that balance at the end of the year. In this case, the adjustments they're actually done in 2 steps, and it needs 2 general ledger accounts, which are merchandise inventory and income summary. We've dealt with income summary before when we close accounts. So The first step is the beginning inventory. And so what we do is remove that beginning balance, excuse me, in the inventory account. We remove it from the books. And we do that by transferring the account balance to the income summary account. When we do that, it removes the beginning inventory balance from the books. And then for step 2, once we determine how much merchandise is on hand, we need to record the transaction for that balance, and the inventory is placed on the books by debiting the merchandise inventory and crediting the income summary account. And this second step records the amount of the inventory on the books. So basically, what we are doing is moving the entire beginning inventory to the income summary account, which is step 1, and then only moving back to the ending inventory to merchandise inventory, which is step 2. So to visually illustrate what I just said, we have the following 2T accounts. Here we have a beginning balance of $52,000 for merchandise inventory, which is on red. And we will use the income summary account to help us adjust the inventory account by removing the old balance. So to do that, we need to credit merchandise inventory for $52,000 and debit income summary for the same amount. These two accounts are part of assets, so remember that the debit side or the left side is used to increase the account, and the credit side or the right side is used to decrease the account. So now we will see that merchandise inventory will have a 0 balance, and income summary will have a balance of $52,000. At the end of the period, it is determined that $47,000 worth of inventory is still available based on our example. So what we must do is we must move back to merchandise inventory the $47,000 that is on hand. If we move this amount from the income summary account, so what we will do is debit merchandise inventory for $47,000 since we are increasing the account, and then we credit the income summary account for $47,000 as well to reduce the income summary account accordingly, okay? Now, the company Whiteside Antiques will also have other adjustments which will need to be made. We have credit sales, and credit sales are made with the expectation that the customer will pay the amount due at a later time. And so we record such transaction as an accounts receivable, which we have covered in this semester before. However, sometimes the accounts receivable is never collected, and that may be due to the buyer's failure to pay the account. And so when this happens, what our company or our business will have to do is we will take a loss from the uncollectible accounts. And so we usually classify those losses as operating expenses. In this case, the business wants to match the expense for uncollectible accounts with the sales revenue for the same period. So the expense is estimated because the actual amount of uncollectible accounts is not really known until later periods. All we can do is estimate. So when we estimate the expense, we usually debit the uncollectible account expense. So you may be wondering, well, how do we estimate such expense? There are several ways that you can estimate the expense for uncollectible accounts. For this case, Whiteside Antiques uses a percentage of net credit sales. And what this is a percentage which is based on the company's past experience with uncollectible accounts and the managers or the management assessment of current business conditions. So if it's a brand new business, it may be a little harder to estimate, so it'll have to be a judgment call. However, once your business has been operating for several years or several periods, you will have data that you can refer back to and make an actual um, estimate based on past data. For this example, we will assume that 0.8% of the net credit sales are estimated to be uncollectible. So if the net credit sales for that particular year was $100,000, what we would do is we would determine that estimate to be at $800, and we calculate that by multiplying the net credit sales of $100,000 by 0.8%. So what we do is debit the uncollectible accounts expense, and a contra asset account, which is allowance for doubtful account, is usually credited for $800. Notice here that the beginning balance for allowance for doubtful accounts was $250. And since we credited an additional $800, our new balance for this account is now $1,050. So all that is left to do is we need to subtract the allowance for doubtful account from the accounts receivable account on the same balance sheet. So for the purpose of this example, we have here a balance of $32,000 in accounts receivable, and we must subtract $1,050 in the allowance for doubtful accounts from accounts receivable. So the net accounts receivable account will now be $30,950. We do have other types of adjustments, and one of them discussed in this chapter is depreciation. Property, plant, and equipment are considered long-term assets, and long-term assets are used in the operation of a business, and they are subject to depreciation. So we use what we know as straight line method to depreciate the store's equipment. And the general formula to calculate depreciation, which is in your book, is cost less the salvage value divided by the asset's estimated useful life, which will be in years. Remember that land is not depreciated, so when you run into that in your homework, please do not depreciate it. And for assets that do depreciate, we record a portion of the asset's cost to a depreciation expense account for each of the periods for the business. And the offsetting entry is to accumulated depreciation. So as discussed in chapter 5, and you could go back to that chapter if you need a refresher, is that accumulated depreciation is a contra asset account, and it has a normal credit balance, which is opposite to the normal balance for an asset account. We also have accrued expenses, which is another type of adjustment. And accrued expenses are expenses or are expense items that relate to the current period but have not yet been paid and do not yet appear in the accounting records. So we will be making end of period adjustments to accrue salary expenses, payroll expenses, and interest expense on a note payable. To visually show again with T accounts, we have salaries owed to employees but not due to be paid until the following month for the amount of $1,200 for this company. And this represents the amount of payroll that occurred in the current year. So what we need to do is we need to debit salaries expense for $1,200 and credit salaries payable for the same amount. And remember that every time something is due but is not yet paid, we must put it in a payable account. It's until the actual payment is processed that we credit the cash account in order to decrease the cash used for the payment. So make sure that you don't confuse that. Another type of expense related to payroll taxes. We have covered that before. Remember that businesses must match revenue and expenses in the appropriate period, and so we must make adjustments to accrue the employer's payroll taxes. So these taxes are often collected but not paid in the next accounting period. So again, based on this example, assuming that there's $1,200 of accrued wages and that all of them are subject to the FICA tax, make sure you go back to the chapters to get a refresher if needed. So the accrual for the payroll taxes would be $74.40 for Social Security tax and $17.40 for Medicare tax. And these are based on the percentage rates, and both of these will be accrued in our adjusting entry. Again, to visually show you with the T accounts, we have the Social Security tax payable that will be credited for $74.40, and the Medicare tax payable, which will also be credited for $17.40. This is just to accrue it. We're not just paying it. That's why it's going into a payable account. So therefore, the total payroll tax expense will be debited for the total amount of $91.80. Similarly, we would also adjust the federal and the state unemployment tax payable. Remember that the federal and state unemployment tax is the FUTA and the SUTA, which we covered before. We would debit payroll tax expense for $72 and credit the federal unemployment tax for $7.20 and credit the state unemployment tax payable for $64.80. Again, we're just accruing it. We're not paying it, which is why it's going into a payable account. Here you can see how the amounts of these taxes were determined using the appropriate percentage rates. So make sure you keep those in mind and read the problems carefully so that you use the correct percentage rate based on the type of tax that you are trying to determine. So for this case, the total accrued unemployment tax for federal and state are $72. And that is going to be it for this chapter, for this lecture. So let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for your time.